Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well. So for this video, I want to talk about a couple of things, mostly things that will be relevant to some of my students this week. So this will be directed more towards my 102 students. And I want to talk a little bit about supertonic. But also a little bit about the submediant and 5/7 in first inversion. So first I'll talk a little bit about the supertonic. So sub means below, super above, so above tonic. Supertonic is a fancy way to say two chord. So your supertonic is going to be a predominant harmony, which means that it's always going to go to a dominant chord, which will be either cadential 6/4, 1/6/4, 5, or 5/7. So first inversion supertonic is used frequently. So let's pick an easy key. I've been on a B flat roll today, so let's go with it. Let's say we're in the key of B flat major. All right, so in the key of B flat major, our supertonic is going to be C. Now, if we use the major scale, build a triad off of that, or a seventh chord, we'll start with triads, it's going to be C, another third up in the scale to E flat, so minor third, another third up in the scale, a major third, to G. Okay, so C minor is your supertonic. Now, a lot of times you will see supertonic used in first inversion, and the reason that is because you can scale degree 4 in the bass. So it can lead to some smooth part writing, which is partially why you see it. And also note that if I'm using supertonic in first inversion, so I've got in the key of B flat, I've got my E flat in the bass, and I arpeggiate the I've got 4 in the bass, it can almost sound a little bit brighter than the 4 chord, which would be same bass note. So this is your 4 chord. This is supertonic in first inversion. Very subtle, just a soprano. So it can sound a little bit brighter, which can confuse the ear a little bit and make you want to say that it's a 4 chord. And plus you've got the scale degree 4 in the bass note. Now, in a minor key, the supertonic is diminished. So for consistency and to work your brain a little bit, let's think about the key of B flat minor. So so our supertonic in B flat minor is still C. Now if we go to spell the triad on top of it, remember that in minor keys you have flat scale degree 6 and flat scale degree 7 to contend with. So if we're spelling a diatonic triad in a minor key of the supertonic, it's going to start on C, go up to E flat, but then go up another minor third to G flat, because that's your flat 6. So that's going to end up producing a diminished triad. Now, for the purposes of my classes, for this unit, you won't have to deal with 7th chord. So 2/7 in the major so we're going back to B flat major. If I spell out a 7th chord, so I add another third on top of that triad, I'm going to get C, E flat, G, B flat. So that's going to be a minor 7th chord. And if I go back to the minor and I spell a 7th chord out, it's going to start on C, E flat, G flat, and B flat. So that's going to be a half diminished chord, and you don't have to, my students in my 102 don't have to worry about hearing that, but it's just, excuse me, good to know. So, diminished chords are very unstable chords. You cannot tonicize a diminished chord. It's never going to sound like home to you. You're never going to come across a diminished chord if you've grown up in Western society and hear a diminished chord and go, oh, yeah, thank God, it's here. But for that reason, they're very unstable. So when you find these in minor keys, they're going to almost always be in first inversion. And if you're dealing with triads, which we are for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to briefly introduce the 7ths for people that are kind of looking ahead maybe. But if you're, if you have a diminished chord, so that's C diminished in first inversion. If you're writing for a 4-part texture, notice that a triad is only 3 notes. So if you're writing for a 4-part texture, you are going to want to double the bass. And as a general rule of thumb, when you're doubling, double the bass, double the bass, double the bass. When you encounter a 1-6-4 chord and you've got tonic triad with your scale degree 5 in the bass and you're in a 4-part texture, you double the bass, which is the 5th of the chord. And the same rule goes for here. When you've got a diminished triad in first inversion, and your supertonic diminished triad specifically, you double the bass. So that's going to be the 3rd of the chord, that E flat, for both the major and the minor in B flat. But, and I should say as well, with the minor, or excuse me, with the major, you still want to try to double the bass, but if you need to put a different note in there to avoid parallel fifths and octaves, it's generally a little more acceptable. So anyway, diminished triad in a minor key, your supertonic is going to be that way. You want to double the bass. So that's going to be in the key of B flat minor. Remember, C diminished is my supertonic triad. In first inversion, I'm going to have E flat in the bass. And then just for purposes of here, I'm going to put G flat and C. Okay, but I need to double that E flat, so I'm just going to put it on top. All right? Okay. Let us hear a couple examples of that. Actually, before we listen, let me briefly talk about submediant. So, submediant is going to be your 6th chord. So in a major key, sticking to B flat major, sorry, your 6th scale degree is going to be G. So if I build a triad off of that, it's going to be G, B flat, D. Okay, so G minor is your submediant. In a minor key, your submediant is going to be a major sonority. So going to B flat minor, the only difference is you're lowering scale degrees 3, 6, and 7, unless you have an accidental, which you've heard me complain about ad nauseum. If you're in a minor key, raise your leading tones all the time. It's an easy way to lose points, and it's, you know, probably one of the senseless ways to lose points. So if you're taking an exam or something and you know you're in a minor key after you're done with your dictation, whether it's melodic or harmonic, just go back and just double check on paper. So anyway, in B flat minor, my submediant is now going to start on G flat. So G flat, B flat, and then your minor third. So going up to D flat. Okay? But it is major in the minor key if you keep that flat scale degree 6. So submediant is mostly used as an expansion of tonic. And, excuse me, when I play these examples for you, I will make mention of that. So basically, an expansion of tonic means that, yes, you can hear harmonies changing because you're a musician, for those of my students watching, and you understand that, you know, kind of there's a little bit of a color change, but unless you throw in a subdominant or a dominant, it generally kind of sounds the same. So for an example, just to play off the top of my head, I'm going to move to C major, everybody's favorite key. And I'm going to play a quick example of that. So I'm going to go 1, 6, 1, 4, 5, 1. Okay? So here's 1. Here, I'll take that down an octave. So 1, 6, 4. We'll do 5, 7. Back to 1. So the first part of that, going from 1, 6, that kind of sounds the same a little bit because it's only one note different. But then when you get to the 4 chord, scaled degree 4 is in a major key, a half step away from 3. So you get that dissonance that says, oh, I'm not in tonic land anymore. So let me actually expand that a little bit. So C major, we'll go, but then, okay, so I played 1, 6, 1, 4, 5, 7, 1. But the 1, 6, 1 at the beginning, you can say it's all tonic, you know, if you're analyzing a piece. So that's what I mean when I say it's an extension of tonic. So your submediant, which is your 6, is frequently followed by a subdominant or your supertonic. It's very common, and especially any of you that do jazz or any of you that plan to go into jazz, 1, 6, 2, 5 is a staple progression. You will see that everywhere. You'll be able to hear it. It fits very nicely. So oftentimes when you have a 6 chord, you can go to a 2 chord. So submediant to supertonic. You can also follow it with a 4 chord. That's fairly common as well. And you would also hear it at the end of a phrase as a deceptive cadence. So if we're in C, I'll play kind of the same progression I did, but instead of resolving to 1, I'm going to resolve it to 6. So I start with the 1 chord, 6, 4, 5, 7, didn't sound awful, but you get there and you're listening and you're expecting one, and then it goes, huh, that's not one. It's not bad, but it's not one. So that's a deceptive cadence. Okay, and then one more thing before we start going through some examples. And again, this is the reason this video is structured this way, is so that my students will make good use of it. So 5/7 in first inversion, right? Figured bass with your Roman numerals. So if you've got a root position, 5/7 chord, that's going to be Roman numeral 5, little 7. First inversion, 6/5, 5 Roman numeral, and then a little 6/5. If you've got 5/7 in second inversion, that's Roman numeral 5, 4/3. And then if you've got a 5/7 in third inversion, that's going to be Roman numeral 5, 4/2. And if you're not familiar with figured bass, it is really handy, actually, if you understand the functionality of it. That's a separate topic, separate video, but just food for thought. It literally describes the relationship between the root and the other voices above it. So 5/7 literally means, let's see if I'm in C. 5/7 means my bass note, G, is a seventh away from the soprano, that F natural. I mean, that's adding an octave in there, but you get the point. And so if you've got the third, in there, in the bass, excuse me, so your 5/7 is in first inversion. Your bass note is a 6 and a 5th away. Let's see, that would be. And then, oh, no, excuse me. I'm so sorry. Yeah, your bass is a 6 and a 5th away from the other notes. And the alto and tenor voices might actually differ in depending on the context of the part writing piece. And so lastly, if you've got your, let's see, this will be second inversion, your 5th, so your D of your G7 chord in the bass, be 4/3. In this case, it's referring to the bass relationship to the root, which is in the alto in this voicing, but it's 4, and then the 7th is a 3rd away. And lastly, if you've got your 7th in the bass, here, I'll move this down an octave, then that inversion is 4/2. So it's a 4th, an augmented 4th in this case, from the 3rd of the chord, and then a 2nd away from the root. But anyway, in this unit, my students will be dealing with the 5/6/5. So that is a dominant 7th chord in first inversion. So if we're in the key of C, it's going to be G7 over a B natural in the bass. Okay, and this is an unstable inversion of the dominant 7th chord. And the reason why that is if you think about it, first inversion, so you've got the 3rd of the chord, B natural in the bass. B natural in relation to tonic is your leading tone. So the bass note, the lowest frequency that you hear, is supposed to be foundational. And if that foundation is your leading tone saying, hey, I want to go back to tonic, it's going to be unstable for that reason. So it's often followed by root position tonic, because in general, you always want your leading tones to resolve up and your sevenths to resolve down. So if I had a more open voicing of this, let's see. So this is tonic, and I'm going to go to 5/7. So usually what will happen, leading tone resolves, the seventh of your 5/7 chord, that F natural, will go down to your third. The root will stay the same. So you go from 2, and it feels like you've arrived for those reasons. So let's look at a couple examples, and I think what I'll do is I'll try to sight read some of the exercises in your oral athletics book. Even though I know they're already available to you in PDF form, I'll go through some of them and we can talk about them. So I'm looking at page 35 for my 102L class, and let's see which one of these looks easy. I'm gonna look at the one starting in measure 317, so 3-1-7. We're back to B flat major. All right, so this is going to be 5 chords. I'll play it for you so you can get it in your ear. I'm going to have to take these a little bit slow, so I apologize, and then we'll talk about it. So 5 chords. Here's your tonic. So really nice progression there, and it pretty much highlights a couple of the things that I mentioned earlier. So we start with tonic in root position, bass goes down a third. I keep, let's see, well actually, so for my voicing, I've got tonic, third in my tenor, so D in the tenor, F in the alto, B flat and soprano up top. So I start there, bass goes down a third to G. I'm going to a 6th chord, so a G chord in root position. I'm going to keep my D in the tenor, move my F in the alto up to a G, and keep that B flat up top. And then I'm going to go to my supertonic in first inversion. So for B flat, a C minor. So the bass is going to go from G, another third down to E flat. And I'm going to move the D in the tenor up to an E flat, keep the G in the alto, and that B flat in soprano is going to go up to C. And then I'm going to go 5-1. So from that 2-6, that C minor over E flat, we're going now to an F major. So that E flat in the bass goes up to F. If I wanted to make it a 5-7 chord, I would keep that E flat in the tenor, but instead I'm going to move it down to a C. And then the G in the alto goes to an F. The C in the soprano leaps down to an A. And then I resolve that just like I would any other 5 chord. So of course bass goes 5-1. In the tenor, I go from C to D, keep the F in the alto, leading tone in the soprano goes up to B flat. All right, so we approach the supertonic in first inversion with the submediant, your 6th chord. When we were at the supertonic, we doubled the bass, not the root of the chord, the bass of the chord. So that E flat, even though the root of the chord was C, and then we followed that supertonic with a dominant functionality and then resolved back to 1. So here it is one more time. pardon my slowness for sight reading. So let's look at another one. Let's look at one in a minor key. So on the same page, I'm still on page 35. Let's see if I can sight read this one. Let's jump to the bottom of the page, looking at the one in C minor, starting in measure 327, so 3, 2, 7. Here's the C minor scale for you. All right, again, 5-chord progression. I will play it for you and then we shall discuss. And then that one doesn't resolve, but for intents and purposes. Okay, so what happened was we started with tonic, C minor, in root position. Actually, we started an octave lower. Then what we did, and I've got E flat in the tenor, G in the alto, C in the soprano, C in the bass. So from tonic, we leapt all the way up to A flat in the bass, went to flat 6, kept E flat in the tenor, moved that G to A flat in the alto, kept C in the soprano. All right, from there, the bass went from A flat to F. The E flat in the tenor went to an F as well. So this is our supertonic. We're doubling the bass, which is D diminished, but the bass is F. So we're doubling that F. Kept A flat in the alto and moved that C in the soprano up to a D. And then we went to 5. So bass goes from F to G. And then to avoid parallel octaves, that F goes down to a D, the A flat in the tenor goes, or excuse me, the alto goes down to a G, and that D up top goes down to a B natural. Again, make sure you hit that accidental. And then I resolved it back to 1. Okay? Let me find an example of your 565. You know what? I will just make one up. So let's play you a progression in C major. Incorporating a 565, and we'll talk about it. So I'm going to start with 1 in root position. Okay, so did you kind of hear how that second to last chord was really dissonant because I didn't have anything between the tritone of the 7th chord, but you heard it really pulling back to tonic, and that's because of that leading tone in the bass and that half step of that 7 wanting to resolve down to 3, right? That F natural wanting to go to E natural. So here it is again. So I went 1, 6, 4, but then 5, 7, back to 1. All right, I think that is enough for today. I'm also running out of daylight here, literally. So I hope that you guys find this useful. I hope that you leave me feedback if you want to hear about something else, even if it's not related to a course that you're in, anything you're interested in And I hope everyone stays healthy and well. So until next time, I'll see ya.